Chapter 1023. Si Qingyan rubbed the hair at the back of his head in frustration. If I give you any medicine, old master will strangle me to death personally. The medicine Bei Yunj used was tested by the higher-ups and confirmed to be safe. However, this was the first time Si Qingyan had seen Bei Yunj's eyes so red and her lazy expression had a hint of indifference. Then forget it. Before Bei Yunj could finish speaking, Si Qingyan turned around and left quickly. When he returned, Si Qingyan threw the medicine in his hand into Bei Yunj's arms. I asked my friend to prescribe it for you. You're not allergic, are you? Bei Yunj looked at the ingredients and smiled lazily. No, thank you, Brother Yan. Si Qingyan was speechless. Alright, he regretted it after doing this. Don't worry, I'll say that I bought it. Bei Yunj put the medicine back into her pocket. Si Qingyan hesitated. Try not to eat it. Compared to the old master, he was more afraid that something would really happen to Bei Yunj. In the wee hours of the morning, after tossing and turning, Bei Yunj went downstairs to pour a glass of water. Sitting on the sofa, Bei Yunj subconsciously glanced at her phone and called Huashidu, but she quickly hung up. At this time, the man might be working. However, she did not expect. Bei Yunj was about to get up when her phone suddenly rang. After picking up the call, it was the man's deep and pleasant voice. There was a magnetic smile in his voice, as if he could calm her down. What's wrong? Can't Yun sleep? Bei Yunj licked her red lips. I called the wrong number just now. I can't sleep. There was a low chuckle in the man's voice. It was hopelessly sexy. In the quiet night, everything seemed gentle and explicit. You even bought a gift for Yun. What? Bei Yunj asked instinctively. Unexpectedly, a video call suddenly popped up on her phone. After the call was connected, Bei Yunj looked at the dim light on the screen. The man's well-defined hand suddenly took out a red headband from the side. For some reason, she had a bad feeling. As expected, when Bei Yunj saw it clearly, she realized that it was a pair of elk antlers. Bei Yunj was speechless. What special fetish did this man have? Huashidu glanced at Bei Yunj. The corners of his peach blossom eyes curled up, looking seductive and light. He said naturally, brother likes little bunnies too. Bei Yunj looked up and saw the man's slender and clean hand playing with another white cat ear that had appeared out of nowhere. This scene was inexplicably ambiguous and seductive. It made people blush and their hearts beat faster. However, the man was quite regretful. It's a pity that Sing Su couldn't buy it after going to 3 stores. Bei Yunj's Hua. Did Sing Su have any self-awareness as a personal assistant? Bei Yunj rejected him expressionlessly. Doesn't Yun like furry things? Of course. The man said this without blushing at all. Bei Yunj, if this thing appeared in someone else's hands, she would find it cute. However, this D***M man's gaze was obviously wrong. I'm going to sleep. Bei Yunj hung up the phone, afraid that Huashidu would say something else. The man looked at the young lady on the other end of the video call. Her face was tense, but her ears were red. He could not help but smile. But soon, Huashidu casually threw the white cat ear in his hand on the table. Go and call Wang Lin and ask when the test for the medicine will be over. P.S. Not long after I got home, I'll continue to update. End of chapter. Chapter 1024. At night, after being disturbed by Huashidu's thoughts, she inexplicably slept much better. The next day, at the Computing Institute, Bei Yunj sent a message to the man. When is brother coming back? Very quickly, there was a reply. Yun misses me that much? Bei Yunj. She could almost imagine Huashidu's tone when he said this to her. What are you looking at, Master Pei? Si Qingyan couldn't help asking. Bei Yunj glanced at Huashidu and instinctively put her phone back into her pocket. Nothing. Si Qingyan held the thermos flask with one hand and almost thought that he was seeing Bei Yunj in a relationship. However, Bei Yunj's eyes were indeed not so red today. Bei Yunj. She didn't know whether to say that this medicine was effective or that Huashidu was effective. Si Qingyan suddenly remembered. You just went to get a drip yesterday. Why are you still here today? Did you take medicine yesterday? Si Qingyan asked. Bei Yunj replied, yes. Si Qingyan nodded thoughtfully. The effect is quite good. Back home, Bei Yunj was chatting with Auntie Meow downstairs when she suddenly received a message from the man. Sleep in brother's bedroom today. There's nothing much at home. Seeing that Bei Yunj was in a better state than yesterday, Si Qingyan did not say much and only reminded her to rest well. At 5 in the afternoon, Bei Yunj was chased out of the institute and asked to rest early. Bei Yunj, couldn't he do something that a human should do? Miss, Assistant Singh came over just now, Auntie Meow said. Bei Yunj had yet to send a message to ask. Then she saw another new message. This way, you can dream of brother. Bei Yunj had just gone upstairs when she knew what Sing Su had done. He had cut off the power in her room. Bei Yunj asked without looking up, is he here to get the documents? Not really. He just stood by our power supply box for a long time. I don't know what he's doing. At night. But after class, Jasmine and Titch's minds were in a mess. Did they just see a man's suit behind the teacher's back? Teacher Pei was cohabiting with someone? It was hard to guess who was behind this. Not long after, Bei Yunj went to the man's bedroom to borrow electricity and taught Jasmine and Titch for 2 hours. After he was done, he prepared to take a shower and sleep. She unconsciously frowned and opened her eyes, but she didn't see anyone in the bedroom. Outside the window, everything was quiet, and the night light was like fireflies. Yunyan? Bei Yunj, who knew nothing, changed into her pajamas and went to bed. There was a faint fragrance on the bed, which made people feel at ease as usual. In the middle of the night, Bei Yunj felt a little cold on her forehead and subconsciously reached out to take it. Only then did she realize that it was a cooling patch. She didn't know when the man had appeared in front of her. His usually lazy peach blossom eyes were now staring straight at her. Huashidu was about to reach out and tidy up the cooling stickers that Bei Yunj had crooked. However, Bei Yunj suddenly grabbed his hand. The man's deep and familiar voice fell into her ears. She looked up. The man lowered his head in surprise, not wanting to meet the girl's direct gaze. This child had a fever and was confused, but she had become much bolder. Huashidu curled his lips and patiently allowed her to hold his hand. His other hand slowly tidied up her cooling stickers. You can't even take care of yourself after being away for 2 weeks? Huashidu had just finished speaking when Bei Yunj suddenly called out, Brother. Chapter 1025. The man sat by the bed. Not long after he got off the plane, he rushed home. At first, he thought that the little girl could not sleep because he was not around. But he did not expect her to be sick. Are you feeling unwell? Huashidu sent a message to the private doctor and allowed the little girl to hold his hand. He said, after sweating, you won't feel uncomfortable anymore. However, Huashidu did not know that Bei Yunj did not hear a single word he said. At this moment, Bei Yunj looked at him for a long time before saying, Come here. Huashidu raised his eyebrows and looked at the little girl on the bed. There was a hint of playfulness in his nonchalant eyes. He put down his phone and listened to her. He sat closer. However, the little girl lying on the bed was still staring at him with dissatisfaction in her eyes. The man bent down with interest. His low and hoarse laughter was seductive. Are you confused because you're sick, Yunyan? Bei Yunj's eyes flickered. Then, before the man could react, Bei Yunj suddenly reached out and wrapped her slender and fair arms around the man's neck. Huashidu was hooked by this sudden hug and leaned over instinctively. However, he quickly supported himself with one hand on the edge of the bed. He was afraid that he would hurt the culprit. Yun. The man's voice was low and hoarse, and his sexy Adam's apple bobbed. But then, Bei Yunj, who had her hands around Huashidu's neck, gradually looked down. She stared at the mole on the man's Adam's apple. Suddenly, the man had yet to speak. Bei Yunj suddenly leaned closer, hooked her arms around the man's neck, and kissed the mole on his Adam's apple. The man also felt a soft and warm layer on his Adam's apple. His body froze, and an unknown evil fire suddenly rose in his lower abdomen. Do I have to take the initiative even in my dreams, brother? Bei Yunj did not notice the darkness in the man's eyes. Her beautiful eyes curved lazily, and she felt that she had completed a major event in her life. She finally kissed the mole on Huashidu's Adam's apple. Although it was a dream, Huashidu was so angry that he laughed. In a dream, Bei Yunj, who was originally a little dizzy, saw Huashidu's dangerous gaze clearly. This dream was a little realistic. What else do you want? The lazy and noble man suddenly laughed and asked her while raising the temperature in the room. Tell me about it. Before Bei Yunj could regain her senses, she saw Huashidu throw the remote control away and suddenly take off his coat and suit jacket. Bei Yunj, she didn't think about that. Bei Yunj watched as the man pulled off his tie with one hand and silently pulled the blanket up. I still want to sleep. Not long after, Bei Yunj was scooped up and leaned against the cushion behind her. They looked up and met each other's eyes. The man's eyes were dark and his magnetic voice was lazy and playful as he asked, "Isn't it too much of a loss for you to only kiss me once in your dream, Union?" Bei Yunj's gaze fell on the place she had just kissed. Because it was her first time doing it, the kiss ended very quickly. Bei Yunj's heart started to itch again. However, when Bei Yunj looked up at Huashidu again, she quickly dismissed this thought. The man in front of her had a dark gaze. It was dangerous and aggressive, as if he could swallow her at any time. She didn't know why. Bei Yunj's mind was in a mess, but she had a premonition. If she really dared to act recklessly, this person would really punish her on the spot. End of this chapter. Chapter 1026. Bei Yunj, wasn't this dream too dangerous? Brother. Just as Bei Yunj's thoughts were running wild, she suddenly seemed to hear movement at the door. Bei Yunj subconsciously looked at the door. Seeing that the young lady dared to be distracted in front of him, the man who had always been casual licked his itchy teeth. The next moment, Bei Yunj had just turned around when she was suddenly pressed against the cushion. She was surrounded by the man's strong, aggressive aura. She looked up and met the man's explicit and burning gaze. This dream was too wild. It was precisely because of this that Bei Yunj did not suspect that this was not a dream. Normally, with the man's usual style, it was impossible for him to do these things to her. Suddenly, Bei Yunj sucked in a breath of cold air. The man bit her neck with a moderate amount of force. It was numb but not painful. However, the atmosphere was so ambiguous that it made her cheeks burn. Don't! Bei Yunj was about to push him away and subconsciously avoided the man's aggressive aggression. However, in the next moment, the man covered the back of her head with one hand and gently stroked her long black hair. In fact, he did not allow her to retreat. The man easily eased her uneasiness, but he also led this dangerous situation that made her blush and her heart race. Outside the door, it was Jiang Baichuan, whom he had met at the private clinic last time. When Huashidu came out again, Jiang Baichuan sized up the man in front of him. He was no different from usual. "Where's your family?" Jiang Baichuan asked. Huashidu lit a cigarette and casually leaned against the door. Inside, Jiang Baichuan. He remembered that Huashidu's family member was only in high school, right? Huashidu was smoking in front of him. When Jiang Baichuan walked in, the girl was dressed neatly except for an obvious bite mark on her neck. Huashidu also had times when he was not human. Jiang Baichuan looked at Huashidu with a complicated expression. "I asked you to come and see a doctor, not to stand there foolishly." The man's voice sounded indifferently. Jiang Baichuan didn't dare to say much. He just quietly checked Bei Yunj's temperature and asked fearlessly, "Is it really just a fever? No other treatment needs?" There were also people in the circle who would often treat certain injuries caused by excessive indulgence in certain aspects for the lovers of the rich. When Jiang Baichuan met Huashidu's gaze, he immediately shut his mouth. "Get some ointment for your neck," Huashidu said slowly. Jiang Baichuan said subconsciously, "The one on your neck will disappear in 2 or 3 days." Huashidu turned to look at him. "Yes, Master Du." Jiang Baichuan was very polite. "Continent K. What's the situation with Master Du? Where did he go? Why are you here to see me?" The man was wearing a white coat. His features were handsome and elegant, and his temperament was cold. "Zhou Yu said, Dr. Song, Master Du has returned to country A these few days, but he will be here soon. Song Su laughed. Since when is there someone in country A who can make Master Du so happy that he forgets about home? Zhou Yu was silent for a moment. Master Du, this time, I brought her to see you. What? He wants to bring a woman to see Continent K? Song Su frowned, his tone filled with dissatisfaction. The next day, Bei Yunj woke up and felt that her hand hurt a little. She opened her eyes and saw that it seemed to have been injected with saline last night. After Bei Yunj went downstairs, she saw Huashidu reading the newspaper. Brother? A memory suddenly appeared in Bei Yunj's mind. The end of this chapter. Chapter 1027. Last night, she seemed to have had a very unruly dream. Bei Yunj thought of the scene where the man turned the tables and her legs almost went weak. Let's go downstairs and eat. The man's expression was natural, as if nothing had happened. Brother, did you come back last night? Bei Yunj probed. The man sat at the dining table and replied lightly, yes. Such a normal reaction made Bei Yunj feel that what happened last night was just a dream. What's wrong? Huashidu looked up at her. Bei Yunj. Then did you greet me last night? The man's hand that was holding his chopsticks stopped and he suddenly smiled. Yun dreamed of me last night? Bei Yunj. This rhetorical question made Bei Yunj speechless. Last night, I went in to see you. Before Bei Yunj could ask again, the man continued, you've been running a high fever, so I asked the doctor to give you an 4 drip. Bei Yunj. That's it? Did Yun do something to me in the dream? The man's thin red lips curled up as he asked with interest. Bei Yunj. She could not believe that she could be so useless in her dream. After being bitten on the neck by the D*Emin man, she begged for mercy. What was even more unexpected was that the Huashidu in her dream could be so terrible and do things that made her blush. Yun, a person's dream reflects their personal preferences to a certain extent. However, the man still smiled slowly. Bei Yunj. I'm hungry. After breakfast, Bei Yunj went upstairs and looked at herself in the mirror doubtfully. In the end, there was no mark on the back of her neck. Bei Yunj pondered and slowly went downstairs. Suddenly, Miss Pei, let me take your temperature. Bei Yunj looked up and saw Jiang Baichuan. She nodded and replied, okay, thank you. Jiang Baichuan also secretly glanced at Bei Yunj. From time to time, she touched the spot where she was bitten last night. He looked rather puzzled. Obviously, he didn't know what had happened last night. Jiang Baichuan couldn't help but glance at the elegant man beside him. He was truly a refined scum. This was also the first time Jiang Baichuan realized that this young man could actually lie to a young lady without blushing at all. Dr. Jiang? Bei Yunj's voice interrupted Jiang Baichuan's thoughts. Let's take Miss Pei's temperature first. After regaining his senses, Jiang Baichuan immediately opened the medical box. Until Jiang Baichuan left. Huashidu suddenly said, Yun, I'm going out of the country in 2 days. Do you want to go with me? Bei Yunj didn't have much to do in the station. He just needed to report to Wang Lin. Sure. Bei Yunj did not look up at Huashidu either. However, when she thought of the dream last night, her ears inexplicably heated up. Why would she have such a dream? The man only curled his lips and didn't say much. The next day, Bei Yunj had just arrived at the computing institute when Wang Lin handed a bottle of new medicine to Bei Yunj. This bottle has just been tested. For now, this new medicine should be the most compatible with you. Bei Yunj smiled. Thank you, Elder Zhong. Wang Lin couldn't help but mutter in his heart as he drank water. There was no need to thank him. If it wasn't for the person beside her, who would be able to invite Luo Xie to make medicine? Suddenly, oh right, I'm going to Continent K the day after tomorrow. Wang Lin choked. Cough cough, where are you going? P.S. Dr. Luo's name has been edited. It's easy to get mixed up. End of this chapter. Chapter 1028. Nance had long said that someone in Continent K was targeting Ge. Now, had Ge been discovered? My brother seems to be doing something in Continent K. Bei Yunj's beautiful eyes curved as she lazily rested her chin on her hand. Wang Lin was silent for a moment before probing, Mr. Hua? Si Qingyan was speechless. So Huashidu was back. No wonder he was in such a good mood today. That's good. Lin heaved a sigh of relief. If it was Huashidu, then there would be no danger in going to Continent K. But I know some people in Continent K. If you want to visit the school or the laboratory, I only plan to play for a few days. Lin's smile froze. All right then. It was harder than ascending to the heavens for his good to open up more interpersonal relationships. That day, Huashidu took a private plane to Continent K. After arriving at Continent K, Seng Su brought Bei Yunj back to Huashidu's private manor. Huashidu went to settle some matters. The population density of Continent K was much lower than that of Yunqing, but the buildings they encountered on the way showed the prosperity of this continent. Continent K is more special, and the difference in regional jurisdiction is also huge. This area is usually crowded at night, and there is no domestic security. Seng Su reminded her. In Seng Su's opinion, a pampered young lady like Bei Yunj was indeed not suitable to come to a place like Continent K. You must bring bodyguards with you when you go out. Seng Su could not help but remind her again. Got it? Bei Yunj replied lazily. Private manor. Bei Yunj had just gone upstairs. After looking at her room, she was about to go downstairs for some tea. However, she did not expect to hear someone talking about her. What kind of bewitching potion has Huashidu been drugged with? Is a woman worth his attention? He really brought her to the manor? Bei Yunj pondered. The woman that the person downstairs was talking about should be her. Dr. Luo. Seng Su hurriedly wanted to stop him. However, Luo Xie sneered. I want to see what kind of fairy he has with him. After saying this, Luo Xie hadn't walked up yet when he suddenly looked up and saw the lazy girl upstairs. Black hair, red dress, snow-white skin, a slender waist, and beautiful eyes that made people not dare to look straight at her. She didn't look like a celestial immortal. Instead, she looked more like a demoness who could bring disaster to countries and people. Are you the woman beside Huashidu? Luo Xie regained his senses and asked in an unfriendly tone. Seng Su had already figured out Bei Yunj's temper. He didn't dare to watch what was about to happen. As expected, Bei Yunj glanced at him and went downstairs. Assistant Seng, I'm going to take a nap later. His meaning was obvious. He wanted Seng Su to get him out of here. Luo Xie's handsome face was about to change in anger. Wasn't the woman beside Huashidu too arrogant? However, when Seng Su heard that, he really turned to look at him and said sincerely, Dr. Luo, Master Du will probably be back at night. Why don't you go back first? Miss Pei does have the habit of taking afternoon naps. Luo Xie's expression was about to collapse. He didn't expect even Seng Su to listen to her so much. She's taking an afternoon nap. Can I sit here? Luo Xie gave a fake smile. Seng Su was serious. Miss Pei was sick 2 days ago and needs to rest. What illness? Fever. Luo Xie had studied medicine for so many years, but this was the first time he knew that she needed to rest to reduce a fever. End of chapter. Chapter 1029. Bei Yunj went downstairs to get a plate of fruits. Before she went upstairs, she asked Seng Su to help her bring the laptop upstairs. Luo Xie looked at this situation. It was obvious that Seng Su had already treated Bei Yunj as Huashidu's subordinate. Therefore, when Huashidu was not around, Seng Su only listened to Bei Yunj. Seng Su had just sent Bei Yunj's precious laptop upstairs. When he went downstairs, he was stopped by Luo Xie. Assistant Seng, what is she studying? Luo Xie guessed that Bei Yunj should also be a university student. Oh, my Miss Pei is still a third-year high school student. She just took a leave of absence. Seng Su smiled nonchalantly. Luo Xie could not believe it. She's still a high school student? Seng Su immediately explained, afraid that Luo Xie would misunderstand Huashidu. Miss Pei is already an adult. She just repeated a grade previously. She still dares to take a leave of absence after repeating a grade? Luo Xie sneered, his eyes full of disdain. He had already treated Bei Yunj as a scheming woman who wanted to cling onto Huashidu. Don't you think that this woman is very scheming? Luo Xie still wanted to remind Xingsu. However, he did not expect Xingsu to nod desperately in agreement and anger. I have indeed never seen a woman more terrifying than Miss Pei. It was only because he had secretly reported to Master Du in the district last time. Miss Pei had held a grudge for half a month. Every time she went to the whole corporation, she would bring a deck of cards and win all of his year-end bonus. Then do you still think that this woman is compatible with Huoshidu? Luo Xie frowned. Xingsu was stunned. If Master Du thinks they are compatible, then they are. Luo Xie's expression was about to crack. An idea flashed in Xingsu's mind. He suddenly grabbed Luo Xie's arm sneakily. Dr. Luo, can you do me a favor? My year-end bonus is in Miss Pei's hands. Luo Xie looked at him sideways and gestured for him to continue. Miss Pei said that as long as I finish her homework, she will return it to me. But mathematics is too difficult. I don't dare to blindly do Miss Pei's homework. Can you do me a favor? Although Zheng Su graduated from a famous university, the difficulty of mathematics questions these days were already different from that of his time. When Luo Xie heard this, his face darkened. He immediately called Huoshidu. Soon, the man's pleasant voice sounded. What's the matter? Master Du, the high school girl beside you even asked your assistant to do her homework. Luo Xie wanted to tell Huoshidu that Bei Yunj was arrogant because she was pampered. But in the next moment, Huoshidu asked unhurriedly, has Xingsu finished writing? Luo Xie, what the hell? Xingsu's math is not very good. Let Xingsu leave his math homework to Zhou Yu. Huoshidu looked at the documents and said slowly, Hengda is quite strict with the quality of the student's homework. Zhou Yu's body trembled. Has the boss become so crazy? He was a high-end talent with a double major in mathematics and finance from Nili University, yet he still had to do high school homework. At this moment, the most unbelievable one was Luo Xie. Huoshidu was clearly a person who was self-abiding, polite, and indifferent. It was almost impossible to see him favoring anyone. But now, Huoshidu had completely lost his bottom line for a woman. Master Du, are you serious? Luo Xie could not help but ask. In 2 days, she will be doing a checkup in your studio. I hope you can do your best and not make any mistakes. Chapter 1030. Me? Before Luo Xie could say anything, the other party hung up. Not long after, Luo Xie left with a dark expression. Back in the laboratory, a little fatty smiled and said, Boss, you're back. Did you see the forum? I'm not free. Luo Xie's expression was ugly. The little fatty knew that his boss was not satisfied with the woman beside Master Du this time. His boss came back with a dark expression. Something must have happened. He leaned forward sneakily. Boss, the forum said that the Computing Institute won the International Computing Competition. The Computing Institute. Luo Xie's face darkened even more and his gaze was as sharp as a blade. Zhen Kai, this is the first time I've realized that you're not afraid of death. The little fatty trembled and immediately explained, No, boss, listen to me. All the semifinals will be included in this international competition. The little fatty hinted crazily. Also, only members under the age of 35 are allowed to participate in the competition. Other than Si Qingyan, who else is under the age of 35 in the Computing Institute? You know. Luo Xie was stunned. You're talking about? That's right. Boss, haven't you liked her for a long time? The little fatty continued to smile obsequiously. How is it, boss? Are you happy? Where is the semifinals? Luo Xie took a deep breath. The gloominess from before had completely disappeared. What could make a withered tree come back to life more than the power of an idol? I heard that it's either Continent K or Country J, the little fatty said. However, rumor has it that although she's quite young, some people say that she's already 35. The little fatty wanted to say something but hesitated. Boss, you're only 27. Do I need you to teach me what kind of woman I like? Luo Xie looked at him coldly. The little fatty was speechless. After all, Luo Xie was the target of countless female researchers in the industry. He didn't know what was wrong with him, but he suddenly liked that person who had never shown her face. He even had to say that he had a very special feeling for her. But who in the industry didn't feel that she was special? This was a super genius who had appeared out of nowhere and won 2 major awards in the world. However, everyone knew that she was an idol. She could only be seen from afar and not blasphemed. Only Wuxia kept thinking that he could become a successful man behind the scenes. Little Fatty's mood was complicated. "Boss, actually, I think you're just..." Wuxia suddenly interrupted. "You stay in the lab. I'm going out to buy some suits." Little Fatty, hopefully she wasn't pregnant and wasn't ugly. Otherwise, he would be letting down his boss's yearning for love. The next day, in the bedroom, the person who was too lazy to move asked while biting a cherry lazily. "Little Greg, when can you feed me cherries?" The laptop on the bed that was forced to chat with him automatically turned black. The Gemini system, which had yet to be installed into the robot's body, had learned one of the greatest human skills in the past few days, playing dead. Although it was shameful, it was very useful. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "Miss Pei?" It was Xianxia's voice. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows and went to open the door. "What's wrong?" Dr. Luo said that there will be a lecture by a famous computer professor in the K-Continent Academy. "You should go and take a look." Xianxia remembered that Bei Yunj was very interested in this aspect. There were talents everywhere in the K-Continent Academy. If Miss Pei could make a few friends during this trip, she would definitely benefit. End of chapter. Chapter 1031. Bei Yunj did not say a word. She only smiled politely at Xianxia and prepared to close the door. "Wait!" Xianxia immediately blocked the door. Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows, but there was no smile in her eyes. "Is there anything else?" Xianxia's scalp went numb for some reason, and he said pitifully, "Miss Pei, since you've come to Continent K, you should at least walk around. What if Master Du thinks that I'm deliberately not letting you out?" Xianxia was originally worried that Bei Yunj would be unsafe if she wandered around. However, he did not expect Bei Yunj to be so homebody. Continent K Academy. Bei Yunj chewed on a candy and sat in the back seat without saying a word. Her aura was filled with impatience. "Miss Pei were here." Xianxia was excited. Actually, Xianxia had never been to Continent K Academy, but he knew that it was a top academy. Although it did not participate in the international rankings, its reputation was still not inferior to Neely University. Xianxia had wanted to go to K University in the past, but unfortunately, K University was very strict with its students. "Miss Pei, aren't you excited? This is a top academy." Xianxia chattered along the way. Bei Yunj answered perfunctorily. However, she did not expect someone to suddenly call her on the way. "Miss Pei?" Bei Yunj turned around and recognized Wuxia. "Dr. Luo, long time no see." Bei Yunj glanced at him and left after politely brushing him off. Xianxia was stunned by this scene. Miss Pei really didn't play by the rules as usual. She was so cold and perfunctory that no one could find fault with her. Wuxia's face darkened as he blocked Bei Yunj. "Miss Pei's way of greeting is really special. Where are you going?" Xianxia immediately said, "I'm taking Miss Pei to a computer lecture." "Computer lecture?" Suddenly, a female voice sounded. It was the woman standing beside Wuxia. "That should be my lecture, right?" Lai Yunqing smiled. Lai Yunqing was 28 years old, the youngest associate professor in Continent K, and also the deputy director of the 10,000 Computing Institute. "Are you Professor Lai?" Xianxia was also very surprised that Lai Yunqing would be so young and beautiful. He was a bit incoherent. You are really young and beautiful and also very powerful." Bei Yunj glanced at Xianxia and knew that she wouldn't be able to leave anytime soon. Lai Yunqing glanced at Bei Yunj and smiled gracefully. "It seems that this gentleman is more interested in my studies than this lady. Our miss is still young, so we're just bringing her here for a tour." Xianxia nodded his head like he was pecking at rice. He looked at Lai Yunqing as if he was looking at his idol. Lai Yunqing raised her eyebrows and said thoughtfully, "Yes, but I've already finished college when I was 20. Tseng Su didn't notice anything wrong and just chatted with Lai Yunqing. Luo Xie looked at Bei Yunj and suddenly asked, "Since Miss Pei is interested in computers, why don't you sit in on the class at K Continent Academy?" Tseng Su looked like a parent from Bei Yunj. His eyes lit up as he asked excitedly, "Really?" Bei Yunj was speechless. This. Lai Yunqing's smile froze. She looked at Luo Xie, not understanding what he meant. Luo Xie glanced at Lai Yunqing. He didn't intend to tell Lai Yunqing that Bei Yunj was brought here by Huoshidu. In Continent K and Country R, Huoshidu usually only brought Zhouyu with him, so no one recognized Tseng Su. Luo Xie seemed to have thought of something and chuckled. "Consider it as giving me face." End of chapter. Chapter 1032. Lai Yunqing's eyes flashed and she regained her smile. "Since you say so, I can only agree." Her tone was relaxed. "However, if Miss Pei performs well, I can also write a recommendation letter for you. In the future, better universities will still give me some face." Hearing this, Bei Yunj glanced at Lai Yunqing leisurely. Her beautiful eyes seemed to be able to see through all her thoughts. Bei Yunj sneered indifferently. Tseng Su was speechless. It was not harmful, but it was extremely insulting. Indeed, Bei Yunj did not say a word, but Lai Yunqing's expression did not look too good. "Assistant Tseng, my patience is limited." Bei Yunj turned to look at Tseng Su. There was a hint of coldness in her beautiful eyes. Tseng Su was speechless. Looking at this scene, Luo Xie did not expect Tseng Su to be afraid of Bei Yunj. "Miss Pei, people can't rely on others all their lives. Isn't it a good thing to work hard for yourself?" Luo Xie asked in an unpleasant tone. He did not understand why Huoshidu would fall for such a woman. "Dr. Luo." Bei Yunj smiled lazily. Her tone was gentle, but her bright eyes were wild and arrogant. "I'm not working hard. I'm leaving some space for others to show off." These words made Luo Xie's handsome face sink. He did not understand why Bei Yunj dared to say such things. Lai Yunqing glanced at Luo Xie and smiled. "Is that so? It seems that Miss Pei must have some outstanding points. Why don't you show it to everyone?" Hearing this, Bei Yunj looked at Lai Yunqing with interest. Only animals in heat will constantly show off their advantages. Tseng Su was speechless. Luo Xie was speechless. Lai Yunqing's face turned green. Fortunately, not long after, someone urged Lai Yunqing to attend the lecture. In the end, they could only leave on bad terms. At the lecture, in the last row, Tseng Su also understood this matter. It was not practical for Bei Yunj to make friends, but it was much easier to make enemies. "Miss Pei, do you have any friends?" Tseng Su asked tentatively. Lai Yunqing was such a mature and gentle woman, and she was also a super god. She had enthusiastically said that she wanted to write a recommendation letter for Bei Yunj, but Bei Yunj was unmoved. Bei Yunj's hand froze in the middle of writing the report. However, just as Bei Yunj looked up and was about to speak, Lai Yunqing suddenly said from the stage, "This time, I see that many of you have brought a computer. Let me teach you a little trick to warm up." Lai Yunqing looked at everyone and smiled. Everyone should be interested in deciphering the computer, right? When the students below the stage heard this, they began to discuss excitedly. "Professor Lai, is it difficult to decipher a computer?" Generally, those with strong computer skills would be able to decipher computers. However, the students in the audience were all freshmen, so it was inevitable that they were curious. "It's not that difficult." Lai Yunqing smiled gently. Currently, the best computer defense system is a new product developed by the Higgins Group. Last month, I went to their research team to observe. They are indeed very impressive. The students below the stage started to jeer. "Then the professor will definitely be able to crack it. As long as it is a system made by humans, it is not invulnerable," Lai Yunqing said confidently. Then she raised her voice and asked, "Then, which student is willing to lend me a computer so that I can give everyone a demonstration?" "The female student in the last row?" Everyone turned their heads and their eyes fell on Bei Yunj. "P.S. Continue tonight. Thank you for your monthly tickets." End of chapter. Chapter 1033. Bei Yunj saved the report and looked at her unhurriedly. Bei Yunj felt Lai Yunqing's gaze lingering on her for a long time. It seemed to have something to do with Luoxia. Don't worry, I won't destroy your computer. I'm just giving everyone a demonstration. Lai Yunqing smiled and said, if it's damaged, I'll pay you 3 times the amount. You don't mind, right? Everyone looked at Professor Lai with eyes full of admiration. After all, she was an associate professor at Continent K's academy at the age of 28. Tseng Su's expression froze when he heard this. Bei Yunj wasn't a kind person. How could she be expected to do good deeds? However, out of his expectation, Bei Yunj chuckled and said leisurely, I don't mind. I can't stop you from invading the system. Tseng Su was speechless. He didn't know why, but he felt that Miss Pei's gentle demeanor made her seem like a bad person. But, Professor Lai, are you sure you want to choose my computer? It doesn't have a good temper. Bei Yunj looked at the computer on her lap thoughtfully. Bei Yunj had been working on the program for a week in order to design the most accurate robot system. Although she had experience with the basic program in her previous life, Bei Yunj had been improving the system from time to time in order to achieve a high level of precision. Tseng Su felt that Bei Yunj's words were a little strange, but he couldn't tell why. Lai Yunqing thought that Bei Yunj was deliberately mystifying things and smiled. Since you don't mind, Miss Pei can bring it up. Bei Yunj let Tseng Su bring her to the stage. Tseng Su was well versed in the ways of the world. In order to prevent unnecessary accidents, Tseng Su stayed by Bei Yunj's computer. This was Miss Pei's computer. If anything went wrong, Tseng Su was afraid that Bei Yunj would smash the entire lecture hall. At this moment, Bei Yunj was sitting in the last row. She was bored to death as she scrolled through the group chat of the Research Institute. She saw a few research institutes gossiping. They said that Continent K's computer scientists were gathering. Something might have happened. Bei Yunj glanced at it and continued to read the documents. On the stage, Lai Yunqing saw Luoxia in the first row and his gaze swept across the last row. His gaze sank. She didn't know why, but she had a feeling that Luoxia's attitude towards Bei Yunj was a little strange. As a result, she was targeting a junior for no reason. If it was in the past, she would also laugh at her own behavior. But now, she couldn't wait any longer. Lai Yunqing's eyes flashed. Then she switched the projection screen to her computer. He wanted to show everyone how he operated it. However, when Lai Yunqing saw the HG logo on Bei Yunj's computer, she frowned. Higgins. However, she remembered that Higgins' latest product didn't include this computer. Even the top-notch configuration sold in auctions was not of this design. A hint of mockery appeared in Lai Yunqing's eyes. Students, the computer system configuration is different, so the difficulty of our hacking will also be different. For example, it would take an expert hacker more than 7 hours to hack into a top-notch computer product of a large enterprise. As for the average random brand, it can be dealt with in 10 minutes. Lai Yunqing started to operate the computer and smiled elegantly. With the configuration of the student's computer, it can be hacked in about 10 minutes. She was saying that Bei Yunj's computer was a random brand. End of chapter. Chapter 1034. When Lai Yunqing said this, she did not notice that the red light on the computer beside her had flashed twice. Tseng Su heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Bei Yunj, who was in the last row, did not seem angry. But then, after Lai Yunqing invaded for a few minutes, the confident smile on her face froze. What was going on? She could have succeeded just now. Why couldn't she attack? Lai Yunqing's expression did not change, but her hand sped up. Everyone could see the code appearing crazily on the screen. However, 10 minutes had passed, and Professor Lai still had not attacked this inferior computer. Suddenly, everyone heard the crisp sound of a mechanical system. Undesirable intrusion detected. Please activate the following mode. At the same time. Not far away, a few options popped up on Bei Yunj's cell phone. A. Automatic lock, tracking mode. B. Anti-intrusion mode. C. Automatic alarm mode. D. Automatic processing mode. Bei Yunj casually clicked it. Then, under everyone's horrified gazes, little G's mechanical voice continued to enter their ears. Okay, automatic processing mode has been selected. Bei Yunj, who had stopped reading the documents, did not understand little G's rebellion. Soon, Bei Yunj suddenly remembered that back then, Si Qingyan had complained that this system was not enough for Bei Yunj and had taken the initiative to help personalize the system. But now, Bei Yunj had a strong feeling, although the robot system had a mandatory ban that could stop all system orders. However, once such a ban was issued, the system would return to its factory settings. In other words, everything would be reset. Bei Yunj thought about it and only planned to watch the show. At the same time, she wanted to understand what Si Qingyan thought of her. The others did not expect to see an artificial intelligence and a computer science professor fight today. Just as Bei Yunj's order was issued, everyone suddenly saw Bei Yunj's computer screen light up and a series of codes appeared. Then, on the big screen, Lai Yunqing's computer screen suddenly turned black. Lai Yunqing's expression changed. What? Her computer had been counterlocked. The students below the stage pointed and discussed. They could not believe that this inferior computer could lock Lai Yunqing's computer without anyone controlling it. However, the lecture was still going on. Lai Yunqing had no choice but to calm down. She bit her lip, looked at Luo Xie below the stage, and continued to control of the computer. A few minutes later, Lai Yunqing's computer suddenly returned to normal. Lai Yunqing heaved a sigh of relief and prepared for the next round of hacking to save face. When Luo Xie saw this scene, he could not help but turn to look at the last row. He only saw Bei Yunj watching with interest, as if she was not worried at all. Just as expected. Suddenly, when the students and professors in the audience saw what happened next, they were so shocked that they were boiling with excitement. Following Lai Yunqing's computer screen, lines of text appeared on the big screen, revealing little Greg's strong resentment. You're the inferior's computer. Your whole family is made of inferior computers. Everyone. This computer must have become a spirit. Bei Yunj, she shouldn't have installed those 27 miniature pinhole cameras. So, Lai Yunqing, whose face was pale, received a series of bullying warnings from little G. Is your system very powerful? Everyone, ? So, Lai Yunqing's computer suddenly turned blue. End of chapter. Chapter 1035. Is your CPU very powerful? As soon as little G's mechanical voice fell, everyone saw that Lai Yunqing's computer had completely collapsed. Everyone was dumbfounded. Is your heat dissipation very good? Then, everyone saw that the code on the computer that no one was controlling was flying faster. Soon, Lai Yunqing's computer started to smoke and the entire computer was paralyzed. Lai Yunqing's face was ashen. She could only stand rooted to the ground, not knowing what to do with the artificial intelligence's counterattack. Bei Yunj. Fortunately, the system had not been installed in the robot. Otherwise, Bei Yunj did not doubt that this little thing would take a hammer and smash Lai Yunqing's computer. However, little G's behavior was still very erratic. It was unknown which of the 27 cameras was recording Lai Yunqing's dark face. Suddenly, Lai Yunqing's face appeared on the projection screen. Little G's crisp and tender mechanical voice sounded as expected. Excuse me, do you think you're very strong? As soon as she finished speaking, there were a few professors and students with laptops in their hands. Their laptops were coldly turned on the sound effects. The same mechanical voice sounded one after another. Excuse me, do you think you're very strong? Excuse me, do you think you're very strong? At first, it was only the laptops on the field, but then it was the phones in everyone's pockets. It was still not very harmful, but it was extremely humiliating. Lai Yunqing's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and her entire body was trembling. The others felt their scalps go numb. This artificial intelligence had become a demon? Tseng Su was also terrified. He instinctively stayed away from this computer that had become a demon. Miss Pei was not to be trifled with, and neither was Miss Pei's computer. Bei Yunj felt that something was wrong. Her eyebrows twitched, and she stood up in time to walk to the podium. Little G, stop the command. As soon as Bei Yunji's voice was recognized, Little G suddenly became obedient. Roger that, master. Moi, master, Bei Yunj. What did Si Qingyan mean by this setting? At this moment, everyone else's computers and phones returned to normal, as if it was just a dream. However, everyone broke out in a cold sweat. They knew that the scene just now was real. Bei Yunj turned to look at Lai Yunqing's broken computer and raised her eyebrows. I'm sorry. I told you that it has a bad temper. I'll pay you back 3 times the price. Everyone, this was indeed the first time they had encountered a bad-tempered computer. Wasn't this computer too awesome? Just one word of inferior brand, and the computer crashed on the spot. What kind of computer is this? Lai Yunqing didn't look too good, but she still asked expressionlessly. One could faintly hear the unwillingness in his voice. Professor Lai doesn't understand AI either? Bei Yunj asked with interest. Artificial intelligence? Lai Yunqing's tone was filled with disbelief. She had never thought that AI would have developed to this extent. Assistant Zheng, the lecture is almost over. Bei Yunj glanced at his watch and said to Xing Su. When Xing Su heard this, he walked over to Bei Yunj's computer and touched it tentatively. He didn't dare to hug it. Miss Pei, is it in a good mood now? Bei Yunj, after leaving. The people in the lecture hall were in an uproar. It's amazing. That computer is too cool. Even Professor Lai can't handle it. Is artificial intelligence so powerful? Then one day will these things really replace us? P.S. Si Qingyan said that Little G was modified according to Master Pei's personality. Does Little G's attitude towards Master Pei look like Master Pei's attitude towards everyone? Think carefully. She scrolled through the comments and saw someone saying that Master Pei was not doing her job. Master Du had too many scenes? The second person didn't respond. I think it's all right. If they felt that Master Du had too many scenes, they could skip it or give up on the article. Firstly, Master Pei had been doing her research. However, in terms of settings, Master Pei was already at the maximum level, although she did have a huge breakthrough in the later stages. If one went further up the peak of scientific research, it would inevitably be sci-fi. After all, hundreds of years ago, not many people would have imagined the information age and smart homes. These were all the results of scientific researchers. Hence, in the later stages, Master Pei's research career would involve some sci-fi elements, but not much. End of chapter. Chapter 1036. That's impossible. Why is it impossible? Look, even Professor Lai lost to this computer. Many students were talking about it, making Lai Yunqing's face turn pale. On the way, Xing Su sighed. Miss Pei, your computer is so similar to your temper. Bei Yunj was speechless. Suddenly, Bei Yunj was about to get into the car when Xing Su carefully held the computer in his arms and a mechanical voice sounded. Bad intrusion detected. Target intercepted. Bei Yunj's eyes flickered. If it was a normal intrusion, Little G would ask her how to deal with it. Only when it was a dangerous intrusion would Little G automatically intercept the intrusion. Xing Su was so frightened by Little G's sudden voice that his hands almost trembled. Bei Yunj's voice was cold. Find out the reason. As soon as she finished speaking, Bei Yunj placed the laptop on the short table in the car. Soon she saw the data that Little G had analyzed automatically. Successfully tracked the IP address data. The range is Ichenli Castle. The intruder is an intruder. There are 7 intruders from the same organization. The area Bei Yunj was in was Ichenli Castle. It was a place where top research universities gathered. The organization behind the attack on such an area probably had an ulterior motive. Miss Pei, what's going on? Xing Su was stunned. He had a feeling that Miss Pei was more powerful than he had imagined. Where's Luoxia? Call Luoxia or Lai Yunqing over. After Bei Yunj finished speaking, Xing Su hurriedly ran off to call them. At this moment, Bei Yunj called Zhong Shenglin. Hello, Ge? How's Continent K? Are you having fun? Zhong Shenglin asked with a smile. Old master, Someone is infiltrating Ichenli Castle in Continent K. Has the Academy of Continent K done any major research recently? Zhong Xinglin's smile froze when he heard Bei Yunzhi's question. What? How did you know? I was wandering around the Academy of Continent K and they targeted me. Bei Yunzhi said slowly. She had seen similar things in her previous life. Most people might find it unbelievable, but Bei Yunzhi knew very well that every major research by researchers would attract attention and danger from all over the world. Zhong Xinglin did not expect Bei Yunzhi to be involved in such a thing. He massaged the space between his eyebrows. I heard that the investigation in Continent K has been very strict recently. It seems like something is going to happen. They're still gathering top computational technology researchers to prepare for a meeting. Nothing in the industry could be hidden from them, who had been in the industry for decades. It was just that there were some things that everyone was used to turning a blind eye to for peace and quiet. You're not planning to interfere in this matter, are you? Zhong Xinglin was somewhat worried. Old Master, if their major research is about genetic data, microbial experiments, and so on. Are you really going to let me go? Bei Yunzhi asked with great interest. Zhong Xinglin was speechless. Bei Yunzhi seemed to be an indifferent person, but ever since Meng Liang held her hand and entered the laboratory in her previous life, Bei Yunzhi understood the responsibility of a researcher better than anyone else. Most of the panic in the world came from battles. And the most fatal battle of all mankind might just be a single genetic data leak. Not long after, Zhong Xinglin called and confirmed that a professor in the Academy of Continent K had made a major breakthrough in genetics. Bei Yunzhi's eyes darkened. She closed the car door and typed on the keyboard. End of chapter. Chapter 1037. Not long after, Bei Yunzhi entered the K Continent Academy's website. Old Master, does the K Continent Academy have any security alarms? Bei Yunzhi asked. Zhong Xinglin was stunned. You went in just like that? To be honest, even he felt his scalp go numb when he heard Bei Yunzhi's hacking speed. That was too fast. How could the K Continent Academy's security system be like a piece of tofu to Bei Yunzhi? Was it just a piece of tofu? Yeah. I remember that when K University's system was hacked more than 10 years ago, there was an alarm system that would go off. But this time, the hacker must have a good understanding of K University, so they might not trigger the alarm. Bei Yunzhi thought for a moment before the corners of her lips suddenly curled up into a casual and unrestrained smile. They won't, but I will. Zhong Xinglin had a bad feeling. A few minutes later, Bei Yunzhi's fingers moved even faster on the keyboard and hacked the entire system. In an instant, Bei Yunzhi accurately triggered the alarm system. A beam of light shot out from the top of a tall tower not far away and circled around the school. The alarm went off. Everyone in the K Continent Academy noticed it. Someone was hacking their school's system. On the other side of Fort Aikenley, 7 people were still hacking. Boss, the K Continent Academy isn't that powerful. We've been hacking for so long, but no one noticed us. Someone couldn't help but say smugly. That person smirked. Don't be careless. Let's get the thing first. Once we're done, we'll throw a celebration party. What's wrong with that? The K Continent Academy is just a bunch of good-looking but useless idiots. The rest of us can't even compare to them. Brothers, let's just get this over with. The other person's tone was sarcastic, and his eyes showed that he was determined to win. After all, this was a meticulous plan. They didn't think there was any possibility of failure. However, the moment he said that, their computer screens suddenly showed that the system had crashed. They didn't even have time to hide their smiles before their eyes widened in shock. Who hacked the K Continent Academy system? K Continent Academy's security system was created by a top hacker in the early years. Even if it was them, they would only dare to invade the loopholes of the K Continent Academy. But now, someone had actually hacked the entire system? The 7 of them were stunned at first. They couldn't figure out which immortal had done this. However, the sudden sound of the alarm made them lose the mood to continue thinking. The leader of the group of 7 stood up abruptly. Didn't I tell you? They have an alarm and told you not to trigger it. Who triggered the alarm? The pale-skinned young man roared in a hoarse voice, as if he was gnashing his teeth. The people from K-Continent Academy had long been on guard against them. Once the alarm went off, their chances of success would drop by at least half. I didn't trigger the alarm. Me neither, boss. Could it be that someone else triggered the alarm? Someone muttered in a low voice. Hearing this, only then did the pale-skinned youth recall that someone had hacked into the K-Continent Academy's system. But why would that person trigger the alarm if he could hack the Academy's system so discreetly? They could not understand. Then, someone guessed, could it be that someone is deliberately showing off to the K-Continent Academy, hacking the school's system and deliberately triggering the alarm? Wasn't this behavior too arrogant? Chapter 1038. But why did it have to be at this time? All of a sudden, they had a bold idea. Someone wanted to make them the scapegoat. The faces of the few of them instantly turned ugly. B-boss, can we still get the information? The young man's expression turned ugly. He glanced at them and quickly started typing on the keyboard. But not long after, the young man realized one thing. His location had been counter-tracked. In an instant, the young man's expression darkened. This was also the first time he realized that there was actually someone who could suppress him to the point that he had no room to fight back in this aspect. He couldn't stop the other party's intrusion at all. If this continued, they would definitely be exposed. Retreat. The young man gritted his teeth and said unwillingly. The others heard this and felt their scalps tingle. Who was this person who could force their boss to retreat? At the same time, Bei Yunj was still holding a candy wrapper in her hand. She leaned against the back seat with interest and slowly checked the other party's computer. Those who didn't know better would think that she was browsing through her own documents. Bei Yunj didn't intend to track the other party's location. She flipped through the documents and turned off the computer after confirming that the other party hadn't achieved his goal. At this moment, someone knocked on the car window. Bei Yunj had just opened the car door when she heard Su say, "Miss Pei, Dr. Luo is here." "Why are you looking for me?" Luo Xie's tone was cold and his expression looked as if someone owed him a few hundred yuan. Bei Yunj looked up at Luo Xie and smiled lazily. "Dr. Luo, is there a bar near the K-Continent Academy?" Luo Xie couldn't hold back his expression. Su's smile froze. Miss Pei looked so serious just now. He thought that she had something important to ask Dr. Luo. In the end, she just wanted to ask Dr. Luo where a bar was. Miss Pei. Su was on the verge of tears. If Master Du knew that Miss Pei went to a bar, his year-end bonus for the next few years would be gone. Luo Xie's expression was gloomy as he said word by word, hopeless. As soon as he finished speaking, Lai Yunqing walked to Luo Xie's side and said gently, "Luo Xie, accompany me to the conference room. Something happened in the hospital." Luo Xie suppressed his anger and took a deep breath. After that, Luo Xie glanced at Bei Yunj and chuckled. "Miss Pei, see you tomorrow." Bei Yunj raised her eyebrows. She still didn't understand what Luo Xie meant. In the conference hall, when Luo Xie and Lai Yunqing arrived, they found that the atmosphere was heavy. Many people were computer experts. "Professor Lai, please take a seat." The dean rubbed his forehead. His scalp still felt numb when he thought about what had just happened. Something very serious happened today. I'm sure everyone can guess what it is. He took a deep breath. Someone hacked our system. Hearing this, the people in the seats were like ants on a hot pan, discussing animatedly. Not long after, someone said, "Dean, since you've asked us to do this, of course we want to help. But there was actually someone who could hack into the K-Continent Academy's system. This is too ridiculous. This person is definitely not simple." Someone immediately chimed in, "Yeah, this system was created by the first Busaka Prize winner, Hesselink. After so many years, who can surpass him? P.S. At least 4 chapters today. Also, Old Su has been sending you red packets for a week." End of chapter. Chapter 1039. If they hadn't seen the system being hacked with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that such a person existed. Thinking of this, their scalps went numb. Someone broke down mentally. Director, if the opponent is already at this stage, we can't guard against it. Today, Continent K Academy had only gathered hundreds of computer experts. But even if Continent K Academy could invite Marcus from Country R and Zhong Shenglin from Country A, they might not be able to guard against it. Suddenly, Lai Yunqing finished observing the hacked website and said, Director, the person who hacked the system is not that group of people. What? How do you know? The others quickly looked at Lai Yunqing. Lai Yunqing smiled. I've fought with that group of people before. The person who hacked the system might have deliberately triggered the alarm system. Hearing this, everyone reacted. That meant that there was a big shot helping them behind the scenes? Everyone was ecstatic and their desire to ride on someone's coattails grew stronger. Who is helping them behind the scenes? The others were also discussing excitedly. When did such a ruthless person appear in Continent K? Below the stage, a person appeared in Luo Xie's mind. But it shouldn't be possible to come to Continent K silently. Thinking of this, Luo Xie's heart felt empty. Professor Lai, you know many people in the industry. Do you know the person who is helping us secretly? After someone asked this question, everyone's gaze fell on Lai Yunqing. Lai Yunqing smiled. Senior helping us secretly means that he doesn't want to show his face. However, I know that Mr. Nancy from Country R has recently come to Continent K. Mr. Nancy? The founder of Higgins? Instantly, the crowd was in an uproar. They looked at Lai Yunqing with even more envy. Lai Yunqing was too lucky. She even knew a retired top big shot like Nancy. That's right. I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Nancy before. My father is his student. This time, I can try to contact Mr. Nancy. Lai Yunqing smiled faintly. Mr. Nancy should be able to help us. Hearing this, everyone looked at Lai Yunqing with more admiration and envy. Lai Yunqing was also used to such a halo. She subconsciously looked at the absent-minded Luo Xie and couldn't help but smile. Inside the manor, Bei Yunj had just returned home when she received a phone call. Max, where are you now? The caller was K, the founder of the chaos. What happened? Bei Yunj asked lazily. Are you in Continent K? Something strange happened in K Continent today. Someone hacked into the K Continent Academy's system. K was shocked. Bei Yunj couldn't help but ask, can't I? This is a system created by the first Busaka Prize winner, Hesselink. For so many years, no one dared to challenge him. After saying that, K sighed inexplicably. Okay, I got it. Then it shouldn't be you. I thought you were in cahoots with the terrorists and wanted to persuade you to turn back. Bei Yunj. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Wait. Before K could finish, Bei Yunj hung up. K, didn't he say that he would hang up if there was nothing else? Meanwhile, Bei Yunj turned her head, thinking that the footsteps just now were because someone had returned. She didn't expect it to be Zhou Yu. Bei Yunj's smile disappeared and Zhou Yu felt a chill down his spine. End of chapter. Chapter 1040. Miss Pei, Zhou Yu had been in Continent K for so many years. Other than Huashidu, Bei Yunj was the first person who gave him a strong sense of oppression. Where's my brother? Bei Yunj's voice was clear. When Huashidu was not around, it sounded cold. Zhou Yu said, Master Du will be back later today. He wants you to eat early and rest well. Bei Yunj glanced at him indifferently and went upstairs. Zhou Yu's back was already covered in cold sweat. Old Zhou, why did you come back first? Seng Su asked curiously. Master Du asked me to come over and tell Miss Pei. Zhou Yu suddenly remembered. All right, find time to give me Miss Pei's math homework. Seng Su was speechless. The next day, Bei Yunj went downstairs and sat under the huge European-style window. She chewed on her bread and looked at the rose garden outside. When Seng Su walked over, Bei Yunj asked slowly, Brother left again? Seng Su immediately explained, Miss Pei, Master Du did have something urgent to attend to these 2 days. However, Master Du will come and fetch you after your health checkup. Bei Yunj paused. Health checkup? Yes, Master Du has been planning to bring you to Dr. Luo for a long time. Tsing Su nodded vigorously. Dr. Luo is very skilled in medicine, especially in psychotherapy. I'm not free. Bei Yunj rejected him perfunctorily. I still have to study. Tsing Su thought for a while and could only call Huashidu in front of Bei Yunj. Bei Yunj suddenly stood up and glanced at Tsing Su casually. She said with a faint smile, I'll go and change. Tsing Su, who felt threatened, said, Thank you, Miss Bei Su. Bei Yunj arrived at Luo Xie's laboratory. In the laboratory, 4 or 5 researchers were chatting. Do you think there are any other beautiful girls in our circle besides Professor Lai? Damn, what a beautiful girl. Suddenly, someone exclaimed. Hearing this, the other person rolled his eyes. Come on, what kind of beauty can there be in this godforsaken place? Before he could finish his sentence, the researcher turned around and saw that Bei Yunj had taken off her hat. Her slender, fair fingers casually brushed her loose black hair. Her beautiful eyes were unruly and bright, and they were dazzling. Wasn't this lady too beautiful? Assistant Zheng. Some people were stunned when they saw Tsing Su. Tsing Su smiled and looked at Bei Yunj. Miss Pei, this is Dr. Luo's laboratory. Bei Yunj glanced at her and responded indifferently. She then sat down on the sofa in the lounge area. The others were discussing wildly. It can't be? Are you here to look for Boss? Boss, don't you like her? How could he know such a beautiful girl? If you put this face in the entertainment industry, you'll be beaten to a pulp. Everyone hadn't finished talking when Luo Xie and Lai Yunqing came in together. This made the people who usually thought that Lai Yunqing had the halo of a goddess suddenly feel that Lai Yunqing's goddess halo was unusually dim today. Miss Pei is here too? The smile on Lai Yunqing's face stiffened. Come with me. Luo Xie only threw this sentence at her before he changed into his white coat and walked into a private room. Bei Yunj had just stood up when Tsing Su followed her closely. Tsing Su was still on guard. After all, their Miss Pei was so beautiful. Although Dr. Luo hated Miss Pei, he couldn't help but find her face more and more pleasing to the eye. Chapter 1041. Bei Yunj couldn't be bothered to say anything else and walked straight into the room. Yunqing, you guys go out first. Luo Xie gestured for Bei Yunj to sit opposite him and spoke. But Tsing Su was worried. After all, they were alone. Assistant Tsing, do you want to check for me? Luo Xie's tone was unfriendly. Lai Yunqing immediately smiled and said, Assistant Tsing, let's go out first. Don't worry. After the others left, Luo Xie asked without looking up, Do you have any medical history? Bei Yunj leaned back lazily. I stayed in a mental hospital for a period of time. Luo Xie. He never thought that Huashidu would have such a person by his side. Luo Xie took a deep breath. Does Huashidu know? Bei Yunj smiled unruly. He was the one who picked me up from the mental hospital. Luo Xie couldn't describe his feelings at this moment. What kind of medicine do you usually use? Luo Xie didn't understand Huashidu's thoughts, but at the same time, he couldn't tell that Bei Yunj was actually someone from a mental hospital. Dr. Luo, tell me how much it costs to end this conversation, Bei Yunj said unhurriedly. These words made Luo Xie's thoughts stop for a few seconds. He smiled slightly. Do I lack money? Your medical equipment should have been used for a long time, right? Our nation's medical research institute has produced a batch of new medical equipment in batches. This stunned Luo Xie for a moment. Of course, he knew that the medical equipment of our nation's medical research institute was developed by them. However, because it wasn't widely available on the market, he couldn't get those equipment for the time being. Miss Pei, is your channel really your own channel? Luo Xie's tone couldn't hide the sarcasm. He was certain that she wanted Huashidu to help. Bei Yunj only glanced at him leisurely. If Dr. Luo wants it, you have to listen to me. Luo Xie looked at Bei Yunj for a long time and said slowly, Beiyunj, you don't seem to want Washidu to know about your condition. Beiyunj's eyes moved slightly and she only glanced at him. Dr. Luo, think about it. There are only 2 sets of medical equipment. With that said, the conversation was over. Luo Xie had just gone out when Lai Yunqing hurriedly approached in high heels. Luo Xie, she has already arrived at the airport. Come with me to pick her up. Listen to Yen. Luo Xie replied, all right. Then he turned to Beiyunj and said, I will think about Miss Pei's matter again. Something happened at the K-Continent Academy recently and I have to go out. I'll have to trouble Miss Pei to wait here. Do you need help? Beiyunj asked with a rare smile. At this time, she didn't mind Luo Xie owing her a favor. Lai Yunqing smiled and said, Miss Pei shouldn't be able to help us. This time, we are going to pick up an important person. He doesn't like insignificant people. Beiyunj raised her eyebrows but didn't say anything. Airport. Lai Yunqing looked at Luo Xie with a sweet expression. Luo Xie, thank you for accompanying me. You're welcome. Luo Xie suddenly asked, I heard that Mr. Nancy has a good relationship with the Computing Institute. Yes, Zhong Shenglin seems to have attended Mr. Nancy's class in the past. After Lai Yunqing finished speaking, she saw Nancy walking out of the airport with a few bodyguards behind him. Mr. Nancy. Lai Yunqing hurriedly walked over and started to exchange greetings. I haven't seen you in a long time. I didn't expect you to come to K-Continent personally. Nancy frowned subconsciously. He didn't know who he had sent the last voice message to, but he was as irritable as thunder. Try not to come and see me. If you don't come and see me, I don't want you to care about me in the future. Chapter 1042. After shouting, Nancy still felt that it wasn't enough and fiercely said, Hurry up and go back with me. You're not allowed to stay here. After speaking, Luo Xie and Lai Yunqing were both stunned. They suddenly wondered who could make Mr. Nancy so irritable. Nancy's anger hadn't subsided. He glanced at Lai Yunqing and Luo Xie and his tone became cold, making people feel alienated. Why are you looking for me? Lai Yunqing smiled and said, Mr. Nancy, have you booked a place to stay? If not, how about I accompany you to the K-Continent Academy? I don't have time. I'm here to catch someone. Nancy chuckled and gritted his teeth. Beiyunj, this guy, who knew how many people in K-Continent were eyeing her covetously. He actually came to K-Continent? If Zhong Shenglin hadn't said yesterday that the person who hacked the K-Continent Academy system was Beiyunj, he wouldn't have known that this little bastard had come to K-Continent. Catch someone? Lai Yunqing's smile stiffened. Facing this old man who once stood at the top of this circle was indeed a lot of pressure. Although she was called by many seniors, she could see that Nancy didn't want to talk about his personal affairs. Lai Yunqing quickly changed the topic and smiled. You just arrived here. I'm afraid you won't be able to find him for a while. Lai Yunqing had already promised that she would definitely bring Nancy to the K-Continent Academy. Of course, she didn't want to slap her own face. She bit her lip and insisted, Mr. Nancy, there have been many seminars recently. In everyone's heart, you are an unsurpassable senior. They definitely want to see you. And what if there is an unexpected gain? Lai Yunqing actually wanted to learn from Nancy. After all, Nancy's achievements in computing were even more outstanding than Zhong Shenglin and Marcus. However, Nancy said that he would never accept students in his life. What's there to not surpass? Nancy just laughed casually, but Lai Yunqing thought that Nancy was being modest. Your achievements in this life, if you didn't leave later, you could completely match Hesselink. If it was before, Nancy would be unhappy to hear this. But now, Nancy smiled. I can't match him, but there will always be someone who can, or even surpass him. After that, Nancy walked forward, and Lai Yunqing was stunned for a moment. She didn't understand what Nancy meant. Surpass? Surpass Hesselink? Lai Yunqing only felt that it was absurd and impossible. But at this time, Nancy had already agreed to take a look at the K-Continent Academy. In the car, Nancy was still persistently calling for people to die. Lai Yunqing and Luo squinted at Nancy, who had been on the phone for more than 20 minutes. They admired the person who didn't answer the phone. A few minutes later, the call went through. In Luo Xie's laboratory, Bei Yunj was lazily playing with the computer. "Master, my phone ran out of battery just now." "What's the matter?" Nancy's face almost collapsed from anger. "Do you think I'm a fool? Don't think I don't know that you're deliberately ignoring me." "How would I dare?" Bei Yunj's lazy tone was also faint. The other people in the laboratory couldn't help but look at Bei Yunj with distressed expressions. Which Zhou Renpi was this? How could he be so fierce to this Miss Shen Yan? Nancy was still angry. He smiled faintly. "You don't dare? I'm at the K Continent Academy now. If you don't come to pick me up later, I won't leave. I'll go on a hunger strike here." Bei Yunj, end of chapter. Chapter 1043. Bei Yunj's eyebrows twitched. "Why are you going to K Continent Academy for no reason?" "You can go, but I can't?" Nancy snorted and said domineeringly, "I'll give you an hour. You must appear in front of me." With that said, Nancy hung up the phone. Bei Yunj was speechless. In the laboratory, Tsing Su asked, "Miss, what happened?" Bei Yunj put her phone back into her pocket and pressed her white hat on her hair. "I'm going to K Continent Academy to pick someone up." Half an hour later, Nancy appeared at K Continent Academy. The school leaders were at the entrance. "It really is Nancy." Even the dean sucked in a breath of cold air. When Lai Yunqing saw this, the corners of her lips curled up. She turned around and said to Nancy in a voice that was neither loud nor soft, "We're here. Thank you for coming with me." When the others heard this, they looked at Lai Yunqing even more fervently. Nancy actually gave Lai Yunqing face and came to K Continent Academy? Nancy glanced at Lai Yunqing and didn't say anything. He just stood beside Luo Xie naturally. As for the calm Luo Xie, he was inexplicably nervous when he saw this god that the scientific research world couldn't surpass. Lai Yunqing didn't show any embarrassment on her face and just followed beside Nancy. "Mr. Nancy, it's an honor to meet you. It's really the blessing of K Continent Academy to be able to come and guide you after you retire." The director was so excited that he was almost incoherent, let alone the others. Nancy's status in the industry could be said to be an unshakable legend. Switching to scientific research at the age of 20 and winning the Busaka Prize at the age of 30. Anyone would think that this was cheating. Nancy frowned and glanced at him indifferently. "Director, you're too polite. I'm just taking a look around." "Then, come with me to the office first. I've already prepared afternoon tea." Nancy's face was expressionless, but he soon nodded. He was indeed tired from rushing from Nili to Yuncheng and then to K Continent. "The rest of you, go to the conference room and wait," the director said happily. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but discuss after the director and the others left. Was it really Lai Yunqing who invited him? Then her connections are too terrifying. Otherwise, how could it be you? Lai Yunqing is really a goddess. If I was so familiar with Mr. Nancy, I would have taken it out to show off. But what about her? He was humble and low-key and didn't say anything. Exactly. If I can get acquainted with Mr. Nancy, I can brag about it for the rest of my life. Yunqing, thank you for bringing Mr. Nancy here. The dean's tone was amiable. It's nothing. It's what I should do. Lai Yunqing chuckled. Besides, Grandpa Nancy is actually very easy to talk to. Isn't it because you have a good relationship? Mr. Nancy gave you face. The dean continued, Yunqing, if I can get Mr. Nancy to help us, we can only rely on you. But, Lai Yunqing's smile froze as she hesitated. No buts, only you can say that in front of Nancy. Lai Yunqing could only agree to try. After all, even if Nancy didn't give her face, she wouldn't give anyone else face either. A short while later, Lai Yunqing walked in front of Nancy with a troubled expression. Actually, Mr. Nancy, I'm looking for you this time to ask for help. Our Academy K has been targeted by criminals. Last time, someone deliberately hacked the system. Nancy quickly looked up at her with a cold gaze. deliberately hacked the system? Lai Yunqing realized that she had said something wrong, but still forced a smile. You can't be using the Academy K's system to practice, right? Nancy's voice was even colder, and his tone was sarcastic. Don't you know that I don't like to meddle in other people's business? When he left this circle, he was completely disappointed with it. Now that he looked at it, it hadn't changed at all. If he didn't know that it was Bei Yunj who did it, he would have believed her. Lai Yunqing's face stiffened. She didn't expect Nancy to reject her so directly. If you're looking for me for this purpose, I can leave now. Nancy's tone was cold. Lai Yunqing immediately panicked. I'm sorry, I didn't know that you don't like to meddle in other people's business. Nancy only glanced at Lai Yunqing. Although he didn't say anything, it didn't mean that he didn't know what this girl was thinking. He just turned a blind eye. There was no need to embarrass the younger generation. Outside the door. How was it? Did Mr. Nancy agree? The dean asked agitatedly. Lai Yunqing hid the embarrassed expression on her face and shook her head again. The corners of her mouth curled into a helpless arc. Dean, it's not like you don't know Grandpa Nancy's temper. No matter who tries to persuade him, it won't work. When the dean heard this, his body froze. Then what should we do? Dean, it's not easy for Grandpa Nancy to come here. Lai Yunqing sighed helplessly. At the same time, Bei Yunj had just arrived at the entrance of the Academy K when she called Nancy, wanting to ask him to come out. Unexpectedly, Nancy insisted that she go in to look for him. Miss Pei, doesn't the person you want to pick up want to come out? Tseng Su couldn't help but ask. Bei Yunj sneered lazily. I'm going in to pick him up. The old master has a bad temper. When he heard this, Tseng Su also guessed who the old master Bei Yunj was talking about was. Don't tell me there's some random people from the outside world? But he didn't expect. Bei Yunj walked all the way to the conference room. When she opened the door, there were many well-known researchers who looked familiar. Bei Yunj's eyelids twitched. Before she could say a word, the door automatically closed. But when she turned around, she didn't expect to see Lai Yunqing. Lai Yunqing saw Bei Yunj at this juncture and smiled insincerely. Miss Pei, you seem to like squeezing into other people's circle. But this circle is different. If you want to step into it, you have to be strong. The sarcasm in her words was obvious. Bei Yunj chuckled softly. But, have you fixed the lighthouse alarm line last night? Lai Yunqing's face turned red and her eyes shot out fierceness. Bei Yunj's words were a slap to the Academy K's face. But the next moment, before Lai Yunqing could speak, Luo Xie opened the door. He asked, Bei Yunj, what are you doing here? Bei Yunj thought for a moment and glanced at them. I heard that Nancy is here. When they heard this, they immediately understood who Bei Yunj was here for. She was really well informed. Lai Yunqing's eyes were filled with sarcasm. She laughed softly. Miss Pei, do you have any relationship with Old Master Nancy? Old Master Nancy will come down to discuss the gathering later. If Miss Pei has nothing else to do, why don't you wait outside? But just as she finished speaking, a voice sounded behind her. Why are you gathered at the door? The person who spoke was the dean and the person beside him was Nancy. End of chapter. Chapter 1044. Lai Yunqing's face froze, but she quickly smiled. Nothing, we're discussing something. Bei Yunj glanced at Nancy and was about to speak, but Nancy spoke first. Yo, where did this student come from? Bei Yunj was speechless. What a drama queen. In the hall. Lai Yunqing's eyes showed a hint of mockery, but the dean was a little puzzled. Given Nancy's character, if she really did not know him, she would not speak. However, suddenly, a girl ran down the corridor and bumped into Tseng Su. The dean reprimanded her. What's wrong with you? Why are you running around the corridor? If she bumped into Nancy, there would be trouble. The girl looked up and her face was full of tears. I'm sorry. Lai Yunqing frowned. Valerie, aren't you in class? Valerie was the newly hired teaching assistant of Continent K Academy. She was an intern in our nation's computing institute and taught Lai Yunqing's younger brother's class. Professor Lai. Valerie was very pretty, and she cried like a pear blossom. Please help me change classes. I really can't take your brother anymore. Valerie, you have to remember your place. Do you think you can change the rules of the academy just because you want to? Lai Yunqing's voice was cold. The dean more or less understood what was going on. Lai Yunqing had a younger brother who seemed to have been found 2 years ago. Because of his high IQ, he was highly valued by the Lai family. However, he liked to touch female students and teachers. This matter had been blocked by Lai Yunqing many times. Furthermore, Nancy was still here. The dean coughed lightly. Valerie, let's talk about this next time. Hurry up and go to class. When Valerie heard this, her whole body trembled and her eyes were filled with fear. Young lady, you're crying like this. Did something happen? Nancy frowned. When Valerie saw Nancy, her eyes widened in surprise. Mr. Nancy, it's just a small matter. Young people like to blow things up. The dean smiled and was about to ask Nancy to go back. Immediately after. Then, he heard the girl's lazy and pleasant voice. Thank you, Professor Lai, for letting me sit in on your class. Do you mind if I go back with this teaching assistant? Hearing this, Valerie felt that the voice was a little familiar and subconsciously turned around. When he saw the beautiful girl in front of him, he froze. What followed was joy and excitement, and the light in his eyes shone brightly. Why? The smile in Bei Yunji's eyes faded. Only then did Valerie remember that her identity was confidential. But she actually met him here? Bei Yunji pulled out a tissue and handed it to Valerie. Her voice was not gentle. It's just a class. What's there to cry about? Valerie, on the other hand, sobbed and felt inexplicably relieved. She obediently took the tissue and didn't say anything. She didn't know if the teacher remembered her. Back then, she had only attended the teacher's class once. Although she couldn't understand anything, she couldn't forget the teacher's face. Later on, she also wanted to apply to be the teacher's student, but she was told that he no longer took in interns. This was Valerie's regret. She was only ranked 3rd in the beginning of her internship. If she had scored a little higher, she might have been the teacher's student at this moment. Lai Yunqing's face stiffened. She didn't know how to stop Bei Yunji. But soon, Lai Yunqing also comforted herself. Bei Yunji wasn't even from continent K, so how could she go against her? Chapter 1045. Nancy could tell that Bei Yunji knew this girl. She said casually, top universities should be quite open about their resources, right, Dean? The dean could only reply, yes, yes. Let's go, little teaching assistant. After Bei Yunji finished speaking lazily, Tseng Su was stunned. Miss, I have something to call you. You don't have to follow me. Bei Yunji turned around and saw a piece of paper behind Valerie. On the paper was written, I'm a green sow. Bei Yunji's eyes darkened and she quickly tore it off. This action also shocked Valerie. She couldn't help but turn around in fear. To teacher? Bei Yunji crumpled the paper into a ball and threw it into the trash can. She said slowly, it's okay. On the way. Valerie asked cautiously with a hint of nervousness in her voice, Teacher, do you remember me? Bei Yunji said, You're the girl in the 3rd row who passed Tich a note. Valerie was speechless. Her teacher's memory was invincible. Teacher, I was just asking Tich some questions. I was afraid that I would disturb your class, so I... Valerie immediately explained. Bei Yunji replied indifferently, Why are you here as a teaching assistant? The exchange at the Research Institute was suggested by Director Marcus. Bei Yunji snorted. Marcus really likes to find trouble for no reason. Valerie was speechless. Still, he dared to talk back to anyone. Not long after, Valerie followed Bei Yunji into the classroom. She was also afraid that Lai Yunheng would bring other boys to tease Bei Yunji. Pay attention in class. Bei Yunji glanced at the worried Valerie. Valerie pursed her lips. Before she could say anything, she heard whistling from inside the classroom. This was a top university. Because of the bad behavior of a powerful person, many people were following them. Is this the new female student? She's too beautiful. Many boys were cheering. However, when Bei Yunj walked in and glanced at them casually, they felt an inexplicable sense of oppression that made them not dare to smile anymore. Let's continue with the class. As soon as Valerie finished speaking, someone in the audience followed suit and shouted, "Why don't you introduce yourself? If you're shy, why don't we introduce you to someone first?" The audience roared with laughter. Valerie's face turned green. But then, she heard Bei Yunj ask calmly, "Are you in a hurry to introduce yourself because you're afraid that people won't be able to find a place to visit your grave?" In an instant, there was dead silence in the arena. Many people could tell that this new face was not someone to be trifled with. Some people also noticed that Bei Yunj's wristwatch was worth at least 8 digits. She was a classic example of someone born into a super wealthy family. Many people didn't dare to provoke Bei Yunj, but when Bei Yunj went to get the teaching materials, a young man in a sweatshirt suddenly shouted casually, "Miss Valerie, I don't understand a question." This was Lai Yunheng. "Bring it up." Valerie's face didn't look too good, but she could only say, "Miss Valerie, my leg is not very convenient. Why don't you come down and explain it to me?" Lai Yunheng leaned back and waited for Valerie to come down. Valerie's face changed, but she could only walk over. When Valerie came closer, Lai Yunheng took out the question and listened to her explanation. However, the others saw that Lai Yunheng was wearing slippers and holding a mirror between his toes. He aimed at the bottom of Valerie's skirt. The boys took the opportunity to take pictures. Lai Yunheng smiled slyly. End of chapter. Chapter 1046. However, not long after, Bei Yunj happened to return and saw this scene. She slowly bit down on the candy on the tip of her tongue, but her footsteps didn't stop as she walked to Valerie's side. Her beautiful eyes were slightly raised, but she was overflowing with hostility. The next moment, Bei Yunj's clean black leather boots stepped on Lai Yunheng's toes, and the sound of the mirror shattering could be heard. Lai Yunheng's face was twisted and hideous, and his painful howl sent chills down everyone's spine. Everyone lowered their heads. He saw the playful smile on Bei Yunj's face. She was still in high spirits, but under her black leather boots, there was a glaring blood. The scene was chilling. Valerie's face turned pale when she saw this scene. Her voice trembled as she said, Teacher." But at this moment, no one was paying attention to what Valerie was saying. Bei Yunj smiled and said, "Student, your feet are quite long." It was not that there was no one in the K-Continent Academy who had a better background than Lai Yunheng, but they would not spoil their own interests for a piece of rat sh*t. Lai Yunheng didn't expect that the day he kicked an iron board would come so soon. Bei Yunj moved the soles of her shoes away, but Lai Yunheng's toes were almost cut off. It was a tragic sight. "How dare you do this to me? Do you know who I am? My sister is Lai Yunqing." Lai Yunheng's face was full of pain, but he still yelled at Bei Yunj fiercely. "I see." Bei Yunj smirked and raised her eyebrows playfully. "What a pity. I never look at the owner when I hit a dog." Not long after, Lai Yunheng was sent to the hospital. Bei Yunj looked at the others with interest. But when Bei Yunj was called away, the others broke out in cold sweat. Who was this person? She was too cruel. Lai Yunheng's toes were almost cut off. In the dean's office, the dean's face was ashen. Valerie's face was pale. "Dean, actually, shut up. I'll deal with you later." After the director of the hospital roared, he said to Bei Yunj, "Who are you? How dare you cause trouble in our school?" My classmate stretched his leg too far and accidentally stepped on it. Bei Yunj smiled lightly. The dean was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He knew what kind of person Lai Yunheng was. If not for the fact that Lai Yunheng's talent was not inferior to Lai Yunqing's, he would not have allowed Lai Yunheng to stay. He did not doubt that Lai Yunheng would do such a thing. But this silly little girl was too ruthless in her actions. Something happened to Lai Yunheng in the K-Continent Academy? "Get your parents here. I want to see what kind of background you have," the dean said with a dark face. He had to deal with this person today so that he could give the Lai family an explanation. "Dean, this has nothing to do with her. It's all because Before Valerie could finish, Bei Yunj went up to make a call. At this moment, Marcus was brushing his teeth when he answered the phone, but he was wide awake when he heard Bei Yunj's voice. There's something that you need to resolve. Bei Yunj's voice was emotionless. Gah! Marcus was stunned. He did not know what was going on. In 10 minutes, the K-Continent Academy will be connected to the dean's office for a conference call. Bei Yunj looked at his watch. At first, the dean thought that Bei Yunj was pretending to be mysterious. But before he could mock him, a video conference call came. He was stunned. This number was a little familiar. Chapter 1047. Marcus didn't have time to go to the conference room, so he could only start a video conference. He was wearing a suit shirt and a pair of blue shorts. He looked very refined. What's going on? Why are you at the K-Continent Academy? Marcus asked in bewilderment. The dean of the K-Continent Academy pondered for a while, and his face stiffened. He couldn't figure out how Bei Yunj knew Marcus. Aren't you going to tell me why my student was sent to the K-Continent Academy as a teaching assistant? Bei Yunj sat on the sofa, glanced at Marcus, and asked casually. Marcus paused and glanced at Valerie. Valerie? Since when was Valerie her student? She attended one of my classes. Bei Yunj said naturally. Marcus was speechless. After attending one of her classes, she was her student. That meant that he had students all over the world. Valerie is your student? The dean was stunned. Valerie looked older than Bei Yunj. Saying that Bei Yunj was Valerie's student was more like it. Marcus was also a smart person. He could see that Valerie's eyes were red. She might have been wronged and Bei Yunj saw it. He sighed. He knew what Bei Yunj wanted to do. Soon, a smile appeared on Marcus' face. You still don't know her? Then let me introduce her to you. This is the former member of our country's computing institute that you mentioned to me more than a dozen times. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone suddenly fell silent. The dean froze and his mind was in a mess. What? What did she mean? This was? The dean immediately turned his head and looked at the girl who was less than 20 years old in front of him. There was only one thought in his mind. She was F** King done for. That's not right. How could you not know? Didn't we remind you that criminals had hacked into your system yesterday? The dean's face turned paler with every word Marcus said. They had hacked into the system. Let's talk about how to deal with my student who was sexually harassed in your school. Bei Yunj glanced at his phone and threw the evidence that Kay had found to the dean. The dean's face turned pale after reading it. Bei Yunj found Lai Yunheng's private group chat. There were all kinds of unsightly chat records. Last month, someone deliberately wet Valerie's clothes with water. Half a month ago, someone took the opportunity to hug Valerie and discussed in the group chat about Valerie's touch with other girls. A few days ago, someone had even left a note in Valerie's office filled with obscenities. Teacher, I didn't expect Valerie to be your student. The dean's to Valerie's face. I shouldn't have left Lai Yunheng alive. Bei Yunj chuckled softly, but the smile did not reach his eyes. He said slowly, I didn't expect that someone would dare to touch my student. Her eyes curved as she continued to ask him in a good mood, but her tone was gentle. Dean, do you think the reputation of the K-Country Academy will be destroyed in my hands? The dean's face turned pale. The scientific research community was undoubtedly the most competitive. Back then, in order to make him an honorary professor, Neely University had reportedly reached an in-depth cooperation with the Computing Institute. If he expressed his stance on this matter, the consequences would be unimaginable. P.S. Good night. Chapter 1048. Hearing this, Valerie, who was beside her, was a little helpless. She only dared to look at Bei Yunj's faint smile. However, just as the dean was at a loss, the door to the dean's office was suddenly pushed open. Lai Yunqing walked in with a dark expression. When she saw Bei Yunj, she sneered. Wow, Miss Pei is still here. Yunqing. The dean was so frightened that his temples throbbed. He couldn't help but scold her. Lai Yunqing was considered the most promising newcomer in Continent K, so she had the right to be arrogant. However, the person sitting on the sofa opposite her was no ordinary person. It was the person who was nominated for both the Busaka and Farisk awards. Lai Yunqing narrowed her eyes. She didn't know what it meant for the dean to help Bei Yunj. Instead, she sneered. "Dean, I've been with Continent K for many years. Now that my brother's leg is about to be crippled, why are you helping an outsider instead of helping me?" "Yunqing, you have to know how bad Lai Yunqing's behavior is in school." The dean's expression was ugly. He didn't dare to say anything in front of Bei Yunj. Moreover, the video conference was still going on. Marcus and the others saw this scene. But Lai Yunqing sneered and nodded. Bad behavior? It seems that in the vice dean's eyes, as an associate professor and Lai Yunheng's sister, I have a stain on my record. Since that's the case, there's no need for me to continue staying here. Professor Lai, I didn't think of it that way. The dean started to have a headache. Lai Yunqing was a core member of Continent K's Computing Association. If Lai Yunqing left, it would affect Continent K's academy greatly. Now, as Lai Yunheng's sister, I just want to seek justice for my brother. I want the person who hurt him to pay the price. Lai Yunqing stared at Bei Yunj gloomily and sneered. Miss Pei, I didn't argue with you because you were Luo Xie's friend. However, if you can't give me an explanation, you'd better call your parents here. Our Lai family is not to be trifled with in Continent K. Hearing this, the principal's heart skipped a beat. He was afraid that if Bei Yunj was unhappy, she would punish Lai Yunqing along with the Academy of K Continent. Suddenly, a burst of applause attracted Lai Yunqing's attention. Good, Professor Lai is really bold. Lai Yunqing took a closer look and recognized that the person in the video conference was Marcus. Her face turned pale. Director Marcus? She had almost forgotten that no matter how weak Valerie's background was, she was still from the Our Nation's Computing Institute. And her brother had indeed been harassing the people at Country R's Computing Institute. True enough. Marcus laughed, but his eyes were cold. I haven't even gotten an explanation for the sexual harassment of the members I targeted, yet Professor Lai has come knocking on my door. Lai Yunqing looked flustered. She really didn't expect that the director's office was still holding a video conference. He was just an ordinary member. Why was a core member of the Our Nation's Research Institute attending a meeting? Just as Marcus was about to launch an attack, he suddenly paused and smiled meaningfully. Isn't Professor Lai looking for Miss Pei's parents? Lai Yunqing was stunned by this sudden question. But then, a familiar voice sounded outside the door. Who's looking for me? Lai Yunqing's expression changed. She turned around and saw Nancy. End of chapter. Chapter 1049. What was going on? Bei Yunj's parent was Nancy? Why? The color drained from Lai Yunqing's face, and the dean subconsciously closed his eyes, feeling very regretful. Sure enough, Nance knew Bei Yunj from the start. Marcus? What are you doing here? Nancy's tone was full of wariness. Don't think that he didn't know that Marcus and Wang Lin were like ghosts, thinking about how to kidnap other people's disciples every day. Teacher Nancy, it was your student who hurt Professor Lai's brother for the sake of a member of our institute. Look, someone is here to denounce her. Hearing Marcus's words, Lai Yunqing's expression became even worse. Bei Yunj was Nancy's student? What was going on? Didn't Nancy never accept students? How could Bei Yunj become Nancy's student? However, after Nancy learned the truth, his face darkened. Bei Yunj's fingers, which were holding the candy wrapper, paused. What do you mean? I pretended not to know you. Don't you know how to coax an old man like me? You even called Marcus, this lousy guy? Nancy was stunned, then he said angrily. Bei Yunj, Marcus. Marcus's team couldn't help but lower their heads, not daring to look at their leader's expression. Nancy's eyes widened, and the more he spoke, the sadder he became. What, do you want to change masters? To think that I didn't even sleep for 3 days looking for you. Sure enough, this little girl doesn't have a heart at all. Bei Yunji's eyebrows moved, and the corners of his lips twitched. After a while, he said, "I didn't mean that." Marcus's heart was sour and he despised Nancy, this old bastard. Before he became Bei Yunji's master, he always called her Good Gu. After he became her master, he treated himself like Gu's grandfather every day, and he even asked Gu to coax him. Was there anyone more shameless than this old thing? Valerie is from Marcus's institute. Bei Yunji's eyelids twitched, and he could only lick his red lips as he explained. Didn't you hear what he said? He told you to call your parents, and Marcus is your parent? In Nancy's mind, she kept imagining Marcus seizing the opportunity to seize power in her absence. She couldn't wait to fight with Marcus. Marcus, was this old thing was getting more and more out of control? Bei Yunji and Nance never thought that Nance's brain would be like this. Weren't you unwilling? The girl's usually high-spirited face revealed a hint of helplessness. Nancy's entire body. Everyone's a Yunji's on? Nancy's? These are two different things. This old man only has one disciple in his life. How can I let others bully her? Lai Yunqing had just heard Nancy's words when his cold gaze slowly swept over her. Professor Lai, do you have any advice for this old man's education? Lai Yunqing trembled. His body was already cold. How many people in this circle dare to challenge Nancy? This matter has nothing to do with Professor Lai. Professor Lai has been in a bad mood recently, and he offended Mr. Nancy and Miss Pei. The dean seized the opportunity to make Lai Yunqing owe him a favor. End of chapter. Chapter 1050. Just as expected. Lai Yunqing looked at the dean gratefully, but when he glanced at Bei Yunji, there was still a trace of unwillingness in his eyes. After Lai Yunqing left, Mr. Nancy, Marcus, our school has decided to expel Lai Yunheng and give Miss Valerie some financial compensation. The dean asked carefully, "What do you think of this?" "This has nothing to do with me." Nancy snorted coldly and was about to ask Bei Yunji to leave when he heard the dean hurriedly say, "Teacher, since you've already helped us once, can we beg you to help us again?" As soon as the dean finished speaking, Nancy subconsciously looked at him with a trace of shock in his eyes. How did he know Ge'er's identity? Half a minute later, Nancy said to Bei Yunji, "You go back first, I still have something to say." Bei Yunji nodded. After he left, the atmosphere became even colder. "Dean Dondner, your identity can't be revealed to the public." Nancy's face was expressionless, and his pair of eagle-like blue eyes revealed an inviolable majesty. The dean smiled. "I didn't tell Professor Lai Yunqing either, right? Don't worry, teacher has helped our school before, why would I harm her? On the contrary, if teacher can become our school's honorary professor, I will do my best to protect her reputation." It wasn't that the dean didn't know that those who met her would definitely sign a confidentiality agreement. But unfortunately, he didn't sign that confidentiality agreement. No one would have thought that he would expose his identity for a student he met by chance. Nancy's eyes darkened. He understood what the dean meant. He could keep it a secret, but he had to help him solve the problem he was facing, get more benefits for the K-Continent Academy, and stand on the same side as the K-Continent Academy. "Dondner, you're quite ambitious." Nancy's tone revealed a lot of anger. But at this time, the dean was fearless because of this. Especially now, when he was still alone in the K-Continent Academy. "Mr. Nancy, please think about it. Besides, this is not a bad thing for the teacher." The dean's eyes flashed with greed. At that time, it was rumored that he was about 35 years old. But he never would have thought that he wasn't even 20 years old. Such a super genius could bring too many benefits to their academy. Therefore, even if he offended Nancy, he still wanted to obtain these unimaginable benefits. Nancy sneered and said angrily, "Dondner, do you really think that I can't do anything to you now that I'm no longer in this circle? She's my disciple. If you dare to let anything happen to her, I have plenty of ways to tear down your academy." After that, Nancy slammed the door and left. But as soon as he turned the corner, he saw Bei Yunji waiting lazily at the door. Seeing Nancy's furious expression, Pei Yunj knew in her heart that she would definitely be reprimanded this time. She thought quickly and had just organized her words when Nancy suddenly walked towards her and raised her hand. Pei Yunj had an inexplicable bad feeling in her heart. She lowered her head subconsciously, but she didn't expect that in the next moment, a warm and dry palm would suddenly rub her head. After Nancy's faint sigh dissipated, only the curvature of her mouth remained. "Let's go home." This guy was more unbridled than when he was young. Nancy knew very well what Pei Yunj was thinking. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.